Yep.
New World. I've been playing New World. It is the fault of, because basically it was on my radar, but I was just so busy. It really took until, Allcraft and the boys were just like, yeah, check out New World, seriously. I've checked out New World, like 5 or 6 hours in. My Steam time says like 30 hours because I left it on overnight, which was a bit stupid. But yeah, New World is certainly a weird thing. I have almost a video written on my sort of new player experience thoughts, because the new player experience of New World is really good. It's funny how the questing then feels quite bad afterwards. Not bad, but I think it's like questing that you cannot think of in terms of traditional MMOs, because this is really a community / more feeling PvP stuff MMO that is, it's closer to like RuneScape or something. So it's quite hard to work out how to talk. So, let's just do it from the beginning. Basically, there's this new land. For some spooky reason, everyone who just ends up there is like just lives forever or ages very slowly or whatever. But it's got this corruption sort of thing that's, supernatural elements, basically. So you crash land there, you pick up like a basic sword. You find a little outpost. You do some things with the character at the outpost as she explains to you the basics of this world. You learn things like, the basics of crafting, the basics of the combat system. Then you go to your first town, and you're basically helping people around that town in terms of the quest experience. It's all very simple quests, kill some wolves, do whatever. You're helping out those characters as they slowly introduce you to the game's mechanics. And I will certainly say this is a new player experience to an MMO that does a great job of whetting your appetite. Like, here's a bit of combat, here's a bit of, crafting, and then you kind of look at the crafting, you're like, oh, seems like there's quite a lot here. Especially because as you walk through the forest, you're just like, oh, resource node, resource node, resource node, resource. Tree you can chop down. Any tree you see, if you've got the skill, chop it down. Just like RuneScape, I think it was the area near where all of the gnomes were. I remember doing a lot of wood cutting there in RuneScape. But anyway, right. So it does that pretty well. I should probably, though, talk about the elements that go into this new player experience. The first one, I think, is the combat. And it's really weird because this combat, I enjoy sword and board. I then get a rapier where the attack pattern is different, and then it feels janky. But basically, this is a combat system where, left click, light attack. Maybe you do, a whole bunch of repeated light attacks. It's a combo. Hold left click, your power attack. Right click, shield, or, block. Of course, if you block an ability, that will drain your stamina bar. You got stamina, it refreshes, right? If you're wearing light armor, you'll do a dodge roll. If you are wearing like medium armor, you'll do a kind of a hop. And it very much is trying to feel like one of those action-y games. And I think if enemies had bigger abilities with slower telegraphs, then you could start to get a wee bit of that Dark Soulsiness, as much as it does my head in to bring Dark Souls into everything. But that very the way like Dark Souls has got that very basic, very slow combat, but the consequences are there, and the reason why it feels good is the consequences. I actually bring it up because that is where the combat sort of struggles in New World for me, where the enemy attack animations, they just don't feel as tight as they do in some of those games that really nail the combat. You end up just learning attack patterns from experience of, I'll go hit, block, hit, dead. But then you just have that problem. You sort of realize, oh wait, it doesn't do enough damage to me for it to be a problem anyway. You just run up to an enemy. Sure, you take a few hits, you just click through it and it's dead. So it is just that weird thing where it's like everything that you need for good combat is there, but sometimes the way that enemies pathfind and move, like you just can tell it's an MMO. You can just tell.
It's got that budget feel to it, like.
It just has a little bit of a budget feel to it. It's just not as tight. And I hate to use those words like, it's not tight. It's a bit clunky. Those are so undefined words. But, even things like just, you hit an enemy and you're like not really sure how the enemy like is actually reacting. Does this give him a knockback? Does it not? It's like, it's just not really tight enough. So it's that thing where I'm going around with a sword and board and, my combo is just boom, 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 or, some sort of heavier power attack and it's a little bit slower. That's when the combat system can work. I then got a rapier, right? Where it kind of goes boom, 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 boom. Kind of like that. And it's not that you're locked into the animation at the end, but it's that weird thing of because it has... Because like the attack pattern with the rapier is the way that it is, just doesn't feel... It doesn't work as well as it does with the sword, because you kind of feel like you're there, and to do your proper like damage, you want to do the full light attack combo. That just kind of locks you in place a little bit. Now, there is a rapier ability. You hit that ability and it will move you in your current movement direction and cause like one lightning fast, quick attack to happen. Then your thing is that's on like a 6-second cooldown. Enemies will attack you more frequently than that. And not that you should just be dodging everywhere, but it feels janky and not tight whenever you use that dodge ability, because it doesn't really dodge you enough. Sometimes it's hard to know exactly how it is with the enemy. Sometimes like, what, will this enemy hit me? Am I in its, sort of swing range or whatever? You don't really know. It's just not tight enough. Now, what I will say is that because it is, you are just directly controlling your character. You're not like in a traditional MMO where, you are directly controlling your character, but it's very much you target that, you face there, I will hit this button and you will do this animation. With this one, it's like an action game. And because of that, just killing a whole bunch of mobs, grinding out that stuff, can actually feel pretty decent. So it's not the tightest combat ever, but I would say it is serviceable, and I think the amount of fun that you have depends on, what weapon you're using. I've been using rapier and musket. The reasoning there is that the primary and secondary attributes for those have an overlap. That's why I'm using musket rapier instead of musket sword and board. I wish I was using musket sword and board, to be honest, but then, me investing all those points into strength wouldn't make as much sense, because it's, dexterity and intellect that are kind of what I'm doing. So it's interesting there for the combat model. What I will say works quite well with combat in terms of new player experience, and this is something that will slow down, is you basically have, for every weapon that you use, as you use that weapon, you get XP for that type of weapon. And then, so you have a little skill tree for every weapon. And basically that's a mixture of active and passives. You can have 3 slots then, which is your Q, your R, and your F. So you basically have light attack, heavy attack, block, and 3 abilities. And generally I found those abilities to be like more situational things than, the sort of thing you always want to be cycling around to do DPS in some situations. Though for my rapier, I have one that is a bleed slash, and I have another one that is a knockback slash, that if I follow up with a light attack, I do a forward lunge. And it can be a bit more fun when we're using things like that. And you can get up to level, like 5 levels in a weapon category super quickly. And that does let you dabble with a whole bunch of stuff and just get a feel for the system. It does slow down after that, though. But it does have that nice thing of, like, just fighting a random mob feels good, because you're like, oh, cool, I'm getting a little bit of XP for my sword. Not for your sword itself, but for your ability to use swords. So it's, a bit like, imagine in World of Warcraft, right? You didn't have classes, you just had weapon types. And as you used a weapon and got weapon skill, you would go up levels for that weapon, and you could then invest in like a talent tree for one-handed swords, for one-handed axes. Basically, they're doing that, but, within an action game that has no classes, because it's a totally classless game. It is like, say, RuneScape, where, you do something, you get skill in doing that thing. So if I kill a bear, I then go up to that bear, take my skinning knife and skin it, I will get, is it like skinning and tracking? That will go up. And then the more that I do that, I'm then able to track, from small animals to big animals to the predators to the big predators, and I can track those so that I can do hunting more efficiently. Or, I go to chop down a tree. I get XP for wood cutting. That will let me cut wood faster and also cut down, bigger trees, different types of wood. Kinda like in RuneScape. And I think where this game does quite well is where you just have that feeling of like, oh, cool, everything that I does gets my character XP. And not just XP for the specific thing you're doing. I went on a big quest for hemp because I wanted to make armor for my character. And I needed hemp to turn into cloth. And that cloth I would then use with the coarse leather, or, the hides, right, which I would then take to the tannery in the local town. So I was on this quest. I had this big node of hemp. Hit the button. I'm like, oh wait, I got more XP from collecting this hemp than I did from killing some mobs earlier. And I just realized, oh wait, yeah. Then I went back to town. I noticed, oh, there's a bunch of crafting quests. Those actually give me loads of XP. Oh, yeah. It's viable to not go giga into combat in this game. You can go big into crafting because there's just a nice, big, intricate, loads of resources, loads of things you can do with them. That feels really good. It gives you this open world feel. And basically where I'd say, the combat's not the best, maybe this thing isn't the best, that thing isn't the best. It seems like it's coming together to be more than the sum of its parts.
That is, I think, everything an MMO needs to be. It needs to be something for a lot of people to have different types of fun in, different little, different activities to do that all feels like you're progressing on your character or in the world or whatever it seems to be. And then just be more than the sum of its parts. So I think that's what good MMOs have always felt like. They've always felt like all of these beautiful gears all spinning around at the perfect speed, resulting in this big, big engine, this massive machine that just goes and goes and goes. Because the idea of maybe I'm hyper simplifying it, but it sounds to me like it's like a colonial setting, action combat 3D RuneScape.
That's certainly what they're trying, but with additional PvP elements. So this is the bit I need to talk about too. I don't fully understand this. I will definitely say that. I am a new player in this game. My character's like level 12 or something.
Yeah.
But basically, the game map is divided into regions. Now, players join each of 3 different, big factions. Whenever you make a guild in this game, or whatever their name for a guild is, their equivalent, that guild is with one of those big factions. And basically the way it works is each of the zones have got bars on them. And if you do PvP missions as the faction that owns a zone, you will basically reinforce your ownership of that zone. If other groups do PvP missions in that zone and your faction, you'll get I think 3 PvP missions at a time or whatever, then you will undermine control in that zone. And then where that leads into is wars. I'm not 100% sure in this, I will admit, but the war itself is what determines control of an area. And that's, siege weapons, that sort of things going on. But the way that works is that those actually happen on a form of schedule. So once control of a zone has been undermined to the point where it's time for a war, I'm not sure exactly what the mechanics are, but basically there's a time and date for when the war thing happens. And I guess then people queue up for the war. Or the outpost rush, whatever it's called. No, outpost rush is 20v20. Anyway, they do the 50v50 thing, and based on how that ends up going, control of it will flip. Now, I don't know exactly how this next bit factors in, but each, you walk into a town, it will tell you, here's the tax rate for property, here's the tax rate for this and that, here are all the town projects. So you're contributing to projects in a town that will maybe increase, say, the tannery to be better, or increase, this thing or that thing. If a tax rate's really low for crafting, then whenever you use the town tannery, you have a tiny surcharge for every craft that you do. That will be smaller. So it seems like it's got all of these elements that are just kind of playing around to make it be a sort of dynamic feeling, big open world with a big focus on crafting and stuff. Now, there are also dungeons and stuff like that. I don't know what's up with that content, to be honest. I have heard a bunch of people say that, cool game, lots of promise, no end game. So I'm not 100% sure, but what I will say is, so far it feels like it's more than the sum of its parts. Feels like it does potentially have some issues. I think a lot of people are wanting to increase the spawn rate of sheep right now. I'll get into that later. But yeah, it's overall, I'm interested. I'm having fun. I crafted my own gear. Didn't feel like an idiot for doing so. That felt pretty good. Looking at the crafting system, wow, there's a lot of depth here. This looks like it could be really cool. So, I'm enjoying. having fun. I'm certainly in that situation where I don't want to play too much. I don't want to ruin the game because, by just playing the beta forever, but I'm definitely going to play some more of the beta, hopefully be able to give people more advanced thoughts. It's a very interesting game. It is a very different game to your standard theme park MMO, so I think it's great that that sort of thing exists in the market. Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's any other big takes or big things that I noticed. Probably not. I mean, just generally sort of look and feel like things are slick. Things just work quite well. Do I have any other points to make? Not really. I guess like a lot of people have criticized the questing. Certainly questing and story, it to me seems to just be a struct or a way to just get you around the world doing things. And then when you're actually doing questing in a town, there's like these repeatable quests that refresh every, X amount of time. I'd say that those are like the Skyrim Radiant quest system, where it's just like, give us 40 flint. Now the difference is you get 40 flint, you take it back, and that actually contributes to the town's progress.
That stuff's always
and
cool.
It gets you some XP. So like the content is not the most exciting thing there, but it gets you out into the world. And then when you're in the world, you're maybe going to chop down some trees, do this thing, do that thing, sort of see where it takes you, take it all back to town. That can be satisfying, even if the actual quest design there is really quite simple and not that interesting. So that's where I'm at New Worlds. I will say there are things like gilded play, stuff like that. I have no idea what that is like. I will need to get into that. Hopefully some of the people in our WoW guild will be dabbling in the game as well. That's mostly what I think. I've had a good time. It's been interesting. It's felt like it's been more than the sum of its parts. That's got me pretty excited, actually.
Yeah, I think there's only one thing there that I think is worth addressing on it overall, and that is something people are going to be thinking about longevity. And I think we'll know a lot more of this once the full game actually releases. 31st of August, right?
30th or 31st, yeah.
Yeah, and like the idea is, because I did see someone say in chat very nicely, can we get some Breakaway and Crucible content? I love Amazon Game Studios games. Which, very funny, very, very funny indeed. But, it's Amazon Game Studio. Is New World going to survive? Because Breakaway and Crucible were games, basically the studios working on New World are Orange County, Relentless, and Cloud9. Those were all Breakaway and Crucible studios. And, even though they kind of canned them early as being, kind of a bit shitty ideas and shitty implementations, they still put a lot of money into them, and when it didn't work, they went fucking plugged.
Well, I think that
pulled rather.
If you consider that that Amazon have, I don't know, no other big public games, right?
Amazon, I'm pretty sure they...
Because maybe they do, but like the Lord of the Rings MMO's dead. Like this is their bet. I think they know they have to make this work. And I'd also say, unlike those other games, user sentiment and hype and excitement does seem to genuinely be higher here.
Yeah, this might be the one that works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good to know. That's a thought. I guess we'll have to. Obviously, only time can tell.
Yeah.
But at least at least the studio behind the Grand Tour is not working on it.
That was not a good game.
Sorry.
So
rude to say that about them, but
it is what it is. Wasn't a good game.
The reviews speak for themselves.